So, guess who profited from the LA Fire Aid concert? Hello, Elara. Well, I would guess not the people of LA. Let's watch this and find out. But I have a really, really good guess that it's not the people of LA that got the money.
This benefit concert might be one of the biggest scams in disaster fundraising history. And as usual, I'm bringing the receipts. First off, according to reports, the Fire Aid benefit concerts raised over $100 million, supposedly for LA fire victims. But
That's a good number. Good number. 100 million is a good number. But let's see where it went.
since then, residents have been asking, where did all the money go?
Where did
the
it
Jimmy
go?
Dore Show, everybody. Keaton and Kurt in for Jimmy while he is on the road. All right, let's turn our focus to the great state of California. James Lee has a scoop here. For months, LA fire victims have been asking, where did the $100 million from Fire Aid concerts go? I followed the money, and it leads to a shadowy nonprofit called the Annenberg Foundation.
Oh, who could have guessed? And hearing the name, I have a guess what group of people runs it. And I can talk about these people how I go to prison. I hope they will tell.
Let's just say the rabbit hole gets dark fast. So let's hear from James Lee. He's like the first world problems version of Ian Carroll. You know, he investigates things that are like he investigates things that are like slightly less severe than what Ian Carroll looks into.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
a little less spicy.
a little less spicy, right? Exactly. So here we go.
Concert might be one of the biggest scams. This benefit concert might be one of the biggest scams in disaster fundraising history. And as usual, I'm bringing the receipts. First off, according to reports, the Fire Aid benefit concerts raised over $100 million, supposedly for LA fire victims. But since then, residents have been asking, where did all the money go?
$100 million raised for residents, community things, and funds that are supposed to help with Palisades, and there's no accounting or where the money went. They're not telling anyone.
Let's figure this out. So, according to the
That's always a good sign. When they tell no one where the money went. That's always a good sign.
Fire Aid website, it says that all direct donations will be distributed under the advisement of the Annenberg Foundation. According to the IRS 990 form, the Annenberg Foundation is a 501c3 based in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania, in this lovely office building. One massive red flag right away is that only 33% of their annual expenses goes towards actual charity programs. The rest goes
That's quite low. Like really low. That's not good.
to administrative costs like executive compensation. And if you look at the numbers, they treat you pretty good over there, starting with top dog Cynthia Kennard, who's making $750,000 plus another 6 figures in bonuses, which is basically almost 7 figures just for one person there. Here is Cynthia.
So that's actually a little better than I expected. A lot of these nonprofits
Yeah.
are even worse than that. Yeah.
No, I know. I don't donate to anything because most of them are. That probably
Oh, yeah.
sounds kind of high.
Right. Yeah. I was actually a
Really?
little surprised that it was 33%.
That honest?
Yeah.
bonuses, which is basically
If that's actually a high number, how low are the others? That's disgusting. And Jesus, yeah, there's so much fraud going on.
almost 7 figures just for one person there. Here is Cynthia, aka Cinny, hanging out with Gavin Newsom, discussing or strategizing about things like how to solve homelessness, among other things. This is one of those if you know situations. Anyway, just to give you a point of
Yeah. How much do you wanna bet that he got some of the money too? I guarantee you, he got some.
comparison with another nonprofit, Doctors Without Borders, They spend almost 90% of their money on actual programs versus less than 1%
Wow.
on administrative costs. Local
That's
journalists
massive.
have also been asking, where's the money? They found, quote, the FireAid website names only 3 Palisades organizations that receive grants. Among almost 120 organizations listed as receiving grants, none of whom are specific to Pacific Palisades, and those 3 are Kehelet Israel, Chabad of Pacific Palisades, and Palisades Charter High School.
And that's why I told you I can't say who it is. Because in the country I live, I can't or I go to prison.
Others have tried to directly reach out to the Annenberg Foundation. They were kind of given the runaround, various extension numbers, somebody saying they would call them back, no one called back. Also referring them to some mysterious man named Philip, no last name, he was never found. This is just
Great.
crazy. So essentially what they're doing is taking the $100 million, then paying themselves roughly 70% of it, and then the rest of the money they're dishing out to various other nonprofits with their own administrative expenses, and that's how $100 million just ends up disappearing,
Yep.
allegedly.
Chabad,
right.
you say?
Yes, well, they don't
Who would've
call it the
thought?
Annenberg Foundation for nothing.
It goes to build tunnels to the synagogue.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. FireAid concerts net $100 million. Palisades fire victims ask, where's the money? So we got to dig a little deeper. This is the article he was referencing. On April 21st, the editor of Circling the News received a query from a reader. Do you have any information as to where one can apply for the FireAid concert funds? I never could figure out where to apply for those funds. The Annenberg Foundation was tasked with administering the funds. This editor emailed that organization after the reader's inquiry and asked how much of the funds were spent specifically for the Palisades and which nonprofits in that community are receiving money. There was no reply. I sent several subsequent emails, still no reply. CTN called the Annenberg on April 25th and repeated the request. The person answering the phone tried several extensions, but no one answered. She took down my information and said someone would call back. No one did. So this editor called again. It was the same drill. Someone thought it was Philip I needed to talk to, no last name given, but he did not
Great.
respond, nor did anyone at any of the other extensions. My information was once again taken down. No one called. CTN phoned and emailed.
Isn't this great? Just don't answer any questions. Just silence.
Emailed again, and on April 30th received the following email from Barbara Chen, Annenberg Foundation media strategist. With apologies for the delayed reply, I want to provide you with details published previously by FireAid RE Grant Making. For further information, please contact Chris Wallace, Chief Communications Officer. CTN replied, thank you for responding. It's easier to get a meal in Rafa than to get some aid out of this fire concert.
It sounds very similarly run. Similarly,
Yeah,
run,
very
doesn't it?
similarly run. Yeah, exactly. I had gone to that website and saw the assortment of nonprofits that had received grants. It seemed like Pacific Palisades was mostly ignored or forgotten, which is why I reached out to the Annenberg and asked specifically for the grants awarded. Many of the nonprofits receiving money, such as the People Concern or the St. Joseph's, do not help Palisades families.
Yeah, I wonder what's going on there. That the money that specifically was given for the people in LA didn't go to LA. I wonder what's going on there. It's so unclear. It's so unclear what's going on.
Saw that the Chabad, whatever the hell that, something Israel, K something Israel, whatever it is, Metro YMCA, LAUSD, and Palisades High received grants. But what about the Palisadians who lived in apartments on rent control, or the nearly 700 people who lived in the mobile home parks who received no aid? What about the middle class who might have had high mortgages, lack of insurance coverage, lost all of their belongings, and have no money to rebuild their property? And these people have either had to rent, borrow, or buy furniture, and that includes dishes, pots and pans, bath rugs, towels. Of all the grants awarded, which ones targeted Pacific Palisades residents, and why were individuals not considered for fire aid?
Because you want them the hell out of there and not to rebuild their lives? Could that
Yeah.
be why?
Yeah, that's it. They want the people out of there so they can have their rich friends move there or build something to rent out.
No response. It appears that the Fire Aid concert was a boon to nonprofit organizations, but for the ordinary fire victim, they're left to sift through the ashes.
Yeah.
And this tweet caught the eye. Joe Ragcast. This is the not-for-profit world for the most part. It's
Wrong,
sad. Yeah,
that's
this
wrong.
doesn't surprise me at all.
But not for profit and nonprofit are
Well,
different.
nonprofit. Yeah, good call.
Nonprofit
Yeah,
is the
good-
one that I mean, I'm being silly calling it the fake one, but it is. Not for profit literally means it's not for profit, as I
Right.
understand it legally. So the nonprofit world, I've only heard rich kids that went to NYU and they're like, I'm starting a nonprofit. It's like the classic Nepo baby job going
Oh,
back
yeah.
a long time, you know?
And they grift a lot. I mean, it's not surprising. It's a huge grift. I knew someone, I won't say who they were. They've passed away. I think the organization is defunct now, but they were a distant family member. And they had one of these nonprofit organizations, one of these 501c3s. And they passed away. They died. And so I went to the wake, and it was a big wake because we're a big family. And she had like a lot of people who worked with her at this charity organization come and
And
say
here
a
it
few
comes.
words about her. And one after another, they would come up and they would say, oh, she was such a lovely person. She lived in New York. When I would come to New York, she turned me on to all the best restaurants in the city. And we went to all the greatest art galleries. And she turned me on to all this great theater and culture and food and blah, blah, blah. Not one of them, not a single one of her colleagues at this charity organization at her wake had a word to say about any of the good work that the organization did.
Oh, I wonder why. Most likely because it didn't do anything.
It was all about how she exposed them to this great lifestyle, right?
Yeah,
Like
a
that's
day
it.
in the life of
Yeah,
a
nobody said,
Google-
"Oh yeah, and that
yeah.
school we built was awesome," right? That library we funded. No,
Right.
nothing, zero.
Very BLM. I bet BLM gave
Yeah.
even more money to Hamas than these people gave to Palestine.
It's actually a possibility.
That's funny. Yeah, no, does not surprise me at all. It really doesn't surprise me. No, this did not shock me, and this is why I think like this is what has given rise to a lot of the GoFundMe world and the Give Send Go, because now people are like, hey, if we could cut out the middleman, right?
Yeah.
We just give right to somebody, and of course that becomes a grift in and of itself. You have all these fake GoFundMes and fake fundraisers
Yeah.
and charities, but I think that's one of the reasons why those sprung up, is because people want to feel like, hey, all of my money is going to a cause when I donate to something, as opposed
Well,
to
it's like
putting
a
on a
chump.
huge concert. And yeah, 70% right off the top, that goes to, the big wigs at the organization. And then they dole out the remaining 30% to these smaller organizations, which
Yeah.
skim off the top. So by the time any money gets to anybody, it's nothing.
somehow
You're
worse.
better off doing
Yeah.
like a GoFundMe. Yeah.
It's somehow worse than when we sent those weapons to Ukraine and CBS had to pull their interview where it turns out only 30% of the weapons went to the actual people that had to fight.
Yeah, a lot of the weapons went to the black market in Europe. A lot of that went onto the black market, and it's bad. That's why there are so many weapons circulating in Europe, because of the war in Ukraine and the weapons being sold on the black market. And you could see there were several people stopped on fleeing the Ukraine with their cars full of money. Where did that come from?
Right.
But I guess they at least got those 30% of weapons. I hope. This sounds like no one got anything other than underlings who are in the corrupt network. California's a mafia state. It's run by 4 families: Newsom, Brown, the Gettys, and D'Alessandro, and all the Chinatown kind of stuff with the water rights and all that. That's those families carve it up. It's just like a mafia. How could it not be more clear that it's just like the restaurant and casino? They
Right.
extract the wealth, they burn it down, go screw yourself, move. We got better people coming in. We got
Yep.
better people coming in, and we're going to be, in time for the Olympics, we're going to have those new.
All right. Wait, they're gonna have Los Angeles gonna have the Olympics? Oh, okay, yeah. Now it makes absolute sense. And by the way, do you guys remember the satellite videos from the wildfires when they started? They started basically all three fires started at the same time. How is that gonna happen naturally? It doesn't. It doesn't.
15-minute city style dwelling places. No room for you and your affordable house family. You know, a house you paid for.
Right.
Through you.
Exactly. All right.
Hey, have you ever tried getting ivermectin, methylene blue, or membendazole?
Okay, ad time. Yeah. So the money for the LA fire victims is gone. And that's it. Funny, right? So funny.